is John Schratweiser. I am Executive Director of Maryland Citizens for the Arts. It's my pleasure to be your MC tonight. I want to begin simply by thanking the creators of our program tonight, the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts, and the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance. And now a word from our host, the Director of the Maryland Historical Society, Bert Kamara.
Welcome everyone to Maryland's home of stories, collections. It's a memory house, and we want you, and I know a lot of you have participated in what we've been doing in the last few years, but we want to invite you to join up and be a part of Maryland history, because we go back 4 centuries, and there aren't many states in this country that go back that far, and we have a lot to say to the American experience, and we're still saying it. And I just wanted to invite everybody to become members of the St. Mary's, I'm St. Mary's, to the Maryland Historical Society, and also to tell you tonight we have a special promotion. If you become a member, you'll get 18, 12. So in any case, welcome everyone. It's very nice to have you here tonight, and we're just finishing one of the most important years we've had in the whole 170-year history of the Maryland Historical Society. And the Star Spangled Year has been really good to us, but we're going into the future now. And we're doing a lot of really interesting things, so stay tuned. And welcome tonight. We're happy to host you, and have a great time and have a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and to all of your staff here at the Historical Society for helping us out tonight. We're going to get right to it. We have a great guest speaker who comes to us from the wonderful organization who I'm sure many of you have heard of, called Art Place America. And we have the Director of Research Strategies from Art Place, Ms. Jamie Hand.
I want to get to everybody welcome from me this way.
I'm so pleased to be here tonight. First and foremost, I want to thank Mayor Ron Blake for including me in tonight's conversation to the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts and to the Baltimore Cultural Alliance for the invitation, specifically to Jeannie and David here tonight. I also want to extend my congratulations to the 4 new college and university graduates to Baltimore. Some of them are not in Baltimore, but just had an opportunity to meet them, and I'm feeling that they're going to be some major players in a lot of the cultural projects that you're going to hear about tonight. It's great to see such a fabulous turnout for a conversation about arts and culture and the role that it plays in the future of Baltimore. Not surprisingly, based on where I work, I also worked at the National Endowment for the Arts prior to coming here on the Powertown program. I think that's a hugely important conversation to be having, and I hope that I can bring a little bit of a national perspective to what is ultimately a very locally driven conversation. So thank you for having me and letting me be here. First, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our place, who we are, for those of you who don't know, what it is that we mean by creative placemaking, this term that gets bandied about. And then I'm going to show some examples of creative placemaking projects in other communities that might have some relevance to Baltimore. And then finally, I'll sort of present a quick roundup of some Baltimore creative placemaking work that's received national attention and national funding. But I have learned not to talk about projects when the people running the projects are in the room. So I'm going to leave that to some of the, for some of the Q&A. Hopefully some of the folks that are here tonight can share a little bit more. So Art Place America was launched in 2011 as a collaboration among 14 foundations, 8 federal agencies, and 6 financial institutions. It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen and take up a lot of air in the room sometimes. Last year, we adopted a strategic plan that reframed Art Place as a 10-year project. So the end of 2020. Our mission now is to position arts and culture as a core sector of community planning and development in order to strengthen the social, physical, and economic fabric of communities. So in practice, what this means is that having arts and culture represented along housing, transportation, public safety, and open space during any comprehensive conversation about the future of a community. Each of these sectors requires planning and investment from its community, and in return, each of these sectors has a responsibility to make its unique contribution to that community in return. So this positioning of arts and culture as a core sector of planning and development is how the success of art piece will be measured in these sectors. So through our national grants program, which is how many of you may have heard of us already, since 2011, we've seen this repositioning of arts and culture in practice. We've invested almost $57 million in 189 projects and 122 communities of all sizes across the country. In September, we just opened our application process for our 5th round of funding. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you, since I know there's a lot of artists and practitioners in the room, that we have an upcoming deadline on November 3rd. I'm not going to talk about that here. This isn't a grants workshop, but I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, that deadline is November 3rd, and we do have a webinar coming up on October 20th. We do expect to invest $11 million this year in projects across the country. And we'll continue to build out a diverse portfolio of projects in which art is working as a core sector of comprehensive community planning and development. You're going to hear me say that over and over. So moving forward, the National Grants Program, which has really been our only line of business for the past 4 years, it's going to be complemented through 3 new additional lines of business at our place. In addition to the national grants, we'll introduce a series of 5 community-based investments, a new emphasis on field proving, and an expanded approach to research, which is my bucket. The Community-Based Investments Program is designed to learn from longer engagements and sustained multi-year funding to communities. This program will roll out in early 2015, so I can't really tell you much more about it, but we do plan to be making five community investments across the country. Field building connects the people, the organizations, and the networks involved in creative placemaking so that they can establish relationships that will outlive art place. And a new series of research strategies will look to share best practices, tools, and knowledge with practitioners and stakeholders in order to increase the efficacy and the understanding of what creative placemaking actually is. So on that note, what is creative placemaking? I bet right now if I surveyed this room, I could get at least 24 different definitions about what creative placemaking is. We've heard it talked about in tons of different contexts, misused, used in a lot of ways that do make sense. And Baltimore community, I would say in particular, has been a leader over the past couple of years, starting with the NEA Town Grant in 2011 to Station North and hosting conferences and national conversations. Thanks to Ben Stone, who's in here. National conversations about creative placemaking practices. So there's plenty of valid interpretations of what I'm saying is admittedly a fuzzy word. But for the purpose of our mission, for our places mission, we're using the following highly simplified definition. Creative placemaking is strengthening the social, physical, and economic fabric of a community through arts and culture. Or to put it even more simply, doing art to change a place. That's sort of how we talk about it internally. We've been starting to talk about that talk about it this way externally, but we're really trying to boil it down and use plain language. So while many people assume that what we're talking about when we say creative placemaking is making places creative, which is like supporting a greater number of artists and arts organizations within a community, or specifically strengthening the cultural ecology of a place, what we're actually talking about is making places creatively. That little adverb, it's an adverb, is really, really important because, you know, and maybe the X isn't the right graphic to use in this context, because certainly we do believe in strengthening the cultural sector. But when we're talking about creative placemaking, we're talking about positioning artists and creatives as problem solvers. We're talking about positioning them as partners and driving toward community change or revitalization. We're talking about positioning them as people who can see a place in a unique light, and as a sector who has something unique to offer the collective goals that a community or a mayor's office may have. So in terms of the nuts and bolts of what we mean, we're translating all of these ideas into the nuts and bolts of what makes a good creative placemaking project. We talk about them as having 4 components. The first is that you have to delineate a community in geographic terms. It means drawing a circle on a map around a community. So there's a lot of ways to define community, and they're all valid within their own context, but what we're referring to in the context of creative placemaking is a geographically defined community. Second, we ask you to identify a challenge or opportunity that the community would like to take on. So that's not something that you as an artist or an arts organization have always wanted to do, some program or expression, and that now you're finding a place to do it. That's not what we mean. We actually mean something that the people in a community would like to see changed, fixed, improved, or strengthened. A problem that needs fixing, an opportunity to be seized, or positive momentum that needs to be sustained. Then we ask you to propose an arts-based intervention to solve that problem, to tackle that challenge or opportunity. And again, this is where we're seeing artists and arts organizations and designers as problem solvers. And last, we're asking you to determine how you'll define success. So not just how you'll measure progress or participation or numbers. I mean, I'm the research director, and I don't often care about the sort of numbers and the data. What we mean is how you will know that you've helped to achieve the change or impact that you were aiming for in the first place, or as we like to say, how you'll know when to stop. So that's another example of when we're trying to sort of simplify and use plain language around success and defining success. So with that in mind, I guess the benefit of having a 30,000-foot view at a national organization is that we've seen a lot of different projects in different communities of all sizes across the country. And so I want to share with you some of our latest thinking about the sort of outcomes of these creative placemaking projects, what they're trying to do in different communities. So I'm going to provide a few different examples, as I said before, from other cities. Some have very explicit things in common with Baltimore. Others might push you to think about creative placemaking in a different way and might not seem relevant at first. And then I'll bring it back to a few projects happening here in Baltimore. So here are 4 ways that we're talking about the things that creative placemaking can do. It can contribute to the quality of life. So what that means to us is creating vibrancy and livability in a place by offering social activities and improving the area's aesthetics. Creative placemaking can seed civic engagement, which we mean provides a sense of integrated community identity and agency, which connects community members to one another and as stewards of their place. We say that creative placemaking can build resilience, which means it contributes to a sense of deep investment in a community and helps reestablish normalcy and provide psychosocial relief following a natural disaster or a community tragedy. And last but not least, and the one that is most frequently associated with creative placemaking, is that it can strengthen economic development, which means it supports economic diversity and prosperity in the community, creating more access to opportunity for all. So with those sort of as a frame of what creative placemaking does, we're also starting to understand some trends in terms of how creative placemaking does it. Broadly speaking, the strategies can be understood in 4 different ways. Planning projects, which are engaging residents in the neighborhood development process, soliciting input and suggestions through rapid prototyping and iterative design so that they may determine the future of their community and be part of that process. Anchoring projects, which are acting as the key, when a project is acting as a key institution in the neighborhood, providing identity, bringing jobs, generating foot traffic, and attracting patrons who support area businesses. A creative placemaking project can be a fixing project, where it's ameliorating structural design problems or planning problems through reimagining use, beautification, and engagement, which connects people to opportunity and to one another. And then activating projects, which are bringing performance and participatory activities to public spaces like plazas and alleyways to make them more attractive and exciting. So in the projects that I'm about to present and in the projects that are happening here in Baltimore and many of the creative placemaking projects, you'll see many of these strategies working together. But these are sort of different trends that we've been seeing. So first I'm going to run through one that contributes to the quality of life, which again creates vibrancy and livability in a place by offering social activities and improving the area's aesthetic. This is a project in Newark, New Jersey. It's an anchoring project with the Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District. It's transforming a historic 8-story high Greek Revival facade structure into a 615-person outdoor performance venue and urban farm. It was a house of worship, and then it was a soup kitchen. And it was the South Park Calvary United Presbyterian Church, and it was a focal point for the Lincoln Park neighborhood for over 150 years. A fire in 1992 destroyed much of the building, leaving only the facade standing. Lincoln Park is an 11-acre, 4-block low-income neighborhood home to 2,500 people, which is pretty small. The idea to transform Lincoln Park into a green arts and cultural district grew from meetings of local residents, civic and business leaders, and city administrators in the late 1990s. The Cultural District, as an organization, has been working to revitalize the park since 2002. And thanks to the nonprofit's efforts, a growing number of residents are emerging artists. The soon-to-be renovated facade, as I said, will be accompanied by the 600-seat outdoor amphitheater for community events, as well as the Lincoln Park Music Festival, an annual event that's launched in 2006. That weekend festival, which attracted 60,000 people in 2013, features jazz, hip-hop, gospel, and house music. So as, you know, in the words of the executive director of Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District, the goal is to celebrate the spirit of the community and strengthen the social fabric of the neighborhood. And they're basing it around this structural element that pretty much was an abandoned site since 1992. Next, we'll look at a project that seeds civic engagement, which again is providing a sense of integrated community identity and agency, which connects community members to one another and as stewards of their place. This is a planning project led by the Boston Foundation, which is a local community foundation. We've had a lot of conversations about how local funders can get involved. In this case, the Boston Foundation was joined by over a dozen different local partners in the Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan neighborhoods of Boston, which are located all along the Fairmont commuter rail line. The vision for the Fairmont Cultural Corridor is to draw upon the local cultural assets and to strengthen the ethnic traditions of the corridor's many diverse residents. This group is guided by the belief that deep local resident and business engagement is absolutely critical to ensuring collective ownership and leadership as the surrounding neighborhoods undergo change. They've done a tremendous amount of arts-based work focused on participation and creating what they call an aesthetic of belonging. And for anyone who's interested in learning more, there's a detailed case study called Do You See Yourself in Uphams? A case study of belonging, disbelonging, and the Uphams Corner Initiative. Next, we'll go through a project that builds resiliency, and again, that contributes to a sense of deep investment in community and helps reestablish normalcy and provide psychosocial relief following a natural disaster or community tragedy. And this is the one that at first might not seem relevant to Baltimore, but Baltimore is a coastal city, as I'll remind everybody. So we're all going to be thinking and talking in terms of resiliency, I think, pretty soon. And my background is landscape architecture, so I can't help but think that way. So this project has components of both a planning and sort of a fixing project. It's received both NEA, our town funding, and our place funding. In Fargo, North Dakota, they have a series of, I think it's 10 to 12 stormwater detention basins that were put in to deal with the flooding of the Red River. And those were placed sort of as a quick fix and an engineered solution in communities throughout the city, primarily in predominantly immigrant and Native American communities. And they were done in a way that actually separated communities from each other and separated neighborhoods in ways that they just had an expanded sort of barren wasteland. The planning department came in and said, you know, most of the year, once annually these flood, but most of the year these are empty. What can we do? How can we look to the arts to talk about ways to transform these into public commons? So national artist Jackie Bruckner drove the planning process by engaging environmental experts, government, nonprofits, and residents to determine design and programming for this space. The first one is happening, it's under construction right now, and that one is being seen as a model for the other 11. And Jackie specifically has been training local artists to work on the next one, so she will go away and local artists will take up the project itself. So the last two that I'll show are with regard to strengthening economic development, which again is supporting economic diversity and prosperity in the community, creating more access and opportunity for all. The Irrigate project is led by a group called Springboard for the Arts in partnership with the City of St. Paul and LISC. Many of you may know LISC, a community development organization that is nationwide but has local offices. And explicitly, this project was designed to mitigate disruption caused by a new Green Line light rail. So 3 miles, I think 6 miles long, there was light rail construction for about 3 years. And so rather than having that neighborhood be sort of down in the dumps and the businesses suffering because of this construction, they decided to have the artists collaborate with the local businesses and change the experience of this community and of this neighborhood from disruption to destination during the construction. So artists partnered with local businesses they had micro grants, and the artists themselves would go and do events throughout this distance along the corridor. And they had 600 artists collaborating on over 150 projects. One way that they measured their success was sort of interesting. They looked sort of at Google searches and media mentions for positive mentions about this neighborhood rather than negative mentions. And that struck us as an interesting way to look at how they were actually impacting this neighborhood. And this project just wrapped up last month, and we've helped them create a toolkit, a sort of how-to that other communities can use, whether they're disrupted by construction or a natural disaster or other things. But this is an example of how we're going to be sharing best practices. And this last project is the Revolve Live Norway project in Detroit, Michigan. led by the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, and I will let them speak for themselves. We have a video. I think that may come up.
There's 1.5 billion business services in Detroit. It's the number of dollars Detroit spends on retail outside the city every year. It's a huge amount of money that entrepreneurs should be able to capture back in the city. The demand amongst the entrepreneurs far exceeds the supply of space. There's like this misconception there's tons of space in Detroit. There's a ton of space with a ton of problems. What we try to do with all is take on and cover that equation. We want to learn this grant. So we were asking artists to make over spaces and it's truly retail environment, something that's never been done before in Detroit, something that would create a destination that's unique in and of itself.
On the avenue of fashion, there are a lot of places that have a lot of issues. However, we're working through it, and we're not afraid to take over. When I heard about the Revolve program, and I thought, I can be part of this change.
By investing in the space, we've created a more feasible environment for a business to invest in business. Investing in the avenue of fashion and the arts is very important. This is historically significant. It needed to be elevated again, and it was always important to try to build on that legacy. Since we won the grant on May 20th, and we launched the DDF on September 20th, 4 months, 2 blocks, 10 vacant storefronts, 3 public spaces, 31 projects. That timeline was excruciating. Not only did we have to do the work, we had to get ready to show it off to thousands of people. The opportunity then to bring a lot of people out to see it, to the Detroit Design Festival. For the first time, DDF got out there downtown. Sharing the story with a larger audience, telling the good things about Detroit is how we're going to bring more people here. More resources, more money through the door. That's key. We saw the street literally packed from the lodge to 8 Mile. Hundreds of people on the sidewalks, out in the rain to experience this revival.
That was a major change. I mean, we saw everyone coming to this neighborhood, black, white, young, old, rich, poor, gay, straight. They were all here. No one cared. They just wanted to be in the community.
Still a long ways to go. Still a lot of work that needs to be done. Small piece of history and very long history. But there are so many great things about this community. There's so many reasons to come. We just need to get people to come here.
So I thought that was a particularly relevant example to Baltimore, but also I can't wait to see that kind of video about what you guys are doing here in Baltimore. I feel like that a lot of the same themes, a lot of the same approaches are things that you guys could just as easily be up there talking about based on the 2 projects that I'm aware of, and now of a 3rd that has been funded by the NEA. Yeah, so on that note, my question to you is in terms of these sort of 4 ways of framing what creative placemaking can do and what arts and culture can do, can you be talking about the work that's going on in Baltimore in terms of these outcomes? Are these things that you can be kind of checking off your list, more than one, I would say, in most cases? So again, as I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys about what's been going on with the projects that are happening here in Baltimore, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 2011 Our Town grant to a partnership between MICA, D-Center, Artscape, and the Station North Arts and Entertainment District. As I said earlier, led by Ben Stone, who I caught up with earlier this afternoon and learned that they also have another Our Town grant that they just received last month. So if you don't know about what's going on in those projects, make sure you learn tonight. And of course, there's the Transit, which is the 2013 Art Place grant to the Baltimore Office of Promotion of the Arts, focused on the transportation hubs in the Bromo Tower, Highlandtown, and Station North districts. Again, I had the opportunity to learn more about this project this afternoon and about the fantastic performances and arts interventions happening as part of this project, which I believe the mayor will also discuss in her remarks tonight. So back to our simplest definition of creative placemaking, doing art to change a place. I know that there's a whole lot more examples of creative placemaking projects here in Baltimore led by the artists, musicians, performers, designers, and cultural supporters here tonight. So I look forward to learning more about them during the discussion and encourage you to think about this kind of work in terms of its many impacts on the Baltimore community and its power to help Baltimore thrive. So thank you.
Jamie. There's a lot of creative placemaking going on all over the country. Maryland is fortunate to have received 3 Art Plays America creative placemaking grants. Of course, the Transit Project here in Baltimore, the Art Lives Here project in Prince George's County in Mount Rainier in the Gateway District, and in Montgomery County in Tacoma Park, the Revitalized New Hampshire Avenue program. So thank you for believing in Maryland as well. The mayor is here. It's your honor. Mayor Stephanie Rollins. Thank you. I am certainly not at all qualified to introduce the mayor, so I'm going to bring someone else up to do that for me. And it's probably another name that you know. We had met many of the new presidents of universities earlier tonight, and we now have a new president of the Baltimore Development Corporation. Will you please welcome Bill Cole?
Thank you all very much. It's great to be here. Somebody said the other day when they introduced me that I was a former politician. I prefer to call myself a recovering elected official. I'm in week 6 of my tenure as president of the Baltimore Development Corporation, and it has been an incredible experience so far. It was nice to see Jamie mentioning in one of her slides there at the end that arts and culture strengthens economic development, because that actually was my lead-in to my introduction to the mayor today. Arts and culture is critical to our economy here in Baltimore. It is an important industry and a true economic sector unto itself, and it is growing. The Baltimore Development Corporation is often viewed as a downtown-centered organization, and I can tell you that in my short time there, I found the exact opposite. The majority of the staff time, energy, and talent is spent focused on neighborhoods and main streets and not on downtown. The other thing I found is that there's a tremendous amount of talent at BDC, and they're willing to work with each and every one of you to help grow the city of Baltimore. BDC has been a proud partner with BOPA and other cultural institutions, and we will continue to explore ways to work together to incentivize creativity in the city, whether it's providing financial contributions to murals on our gateway roads, providing microloans to entrepreneurial artists, working with incubators and makerspaces to ensure that they continue to have places to grow, offering guidance and startup resources through our Small Business Resource Center. I think you get the point. We're engaged and we're committed. We're an investment partner, and we recognize the growth of this city includes the growth of our amazing arts community. Thankfully, our next speaker also clearly recognizes the importance of the arts and shares my belief that the arts are an economic driver in the city of Baltimore. In fact, I think it's important to remember that then Council President Stephanie Rollins Blake led the charge more than 5 years ago to make live entertainment a much more accessible option for bars and restaurants, as opposed to the Prohibition-era rules that existed before. We lived under a crazy system where a restaurant like Pazzo or Sullivan's couldn't legally use the piano in the bar and risked a violation the moment somebody strummed a chord on an acoustic guitar. She recognized that a truly vibrant Baltimore embraced the arts, and that having live music wouldn't destroy the fabric of our community. In fact, that it would enhance it. I'm sure I could weave a great Footloose analogy in here, but I don't need to. She's been a proven leader when it comes to caring for our arts community, and you'll see very shortly that she's very proud of what we're doing together here in Baltimore. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the great pleasure of introducing the mayor of the city of Baltimore, Stephanie Rollins Blake.
Bill, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I can't tell you how pleased I am with your work in your new position. You seem a lot freer and happier for some reason. I don't know why. And Jamie, my goodness, I was taking so many notes, I felt like I was back